Hello again, friends. And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here. Wherever it is that you are in your house, you should be indoors. If you go outdoors, wear a mask. Take care of society and take care of yourself. Of course, what we do here on the show is we answer your questions. I ask them. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, to the man who is known as the Exalted One of the Cult of Cornette, the man who will be answering these questions, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Brian Last, you are precognificent. You have the talent of precognition, because without even knowing, I told you I was going to have a story for you, and without even knowing, you have cut right into the crux of the heart of my story and set it up to be even more scintillating with your opening there. Take care of each other. Wear a mask. Don't go outside. Blah, blah, everything that you just said. You know, we're off kilter and off schedule again here because we did an extra show this past week. And so even though we're actually ahead of that, we're a day behind on our past couple of shows because we wanted everybody to be able to stay with us. We didn't want to hop ahead of you. So since we did an extra show, we left a couple of days in between the rest of the shows. So we're one day late with this one now. We've caught up, basically. But it's off. Usually we do this on Sunday morning, and somebody's usually had a chance to make me grumpy. But in this case, I've actually gone out in public and got grumpy today. And now we're doing this program. And I believe I was talking to Bree, my lovely clerk at the post office, on one of our visits here a few weeks ago, when they announced that they were doing a new rule that everybody that comes into the post office has to be wearing a mask, all the customers, right? And she was saying that I said, well, what are you going to do if they don't? Are you going to tell them? Do you have some to give out? And she said, well, we're not doing that because they tell us to tell people these things. But then, it's like people make a big issue and a big stink and everybody gets cussed. I said, you mean to tell me people would make an issue out of it if you said it's post office requirement to come in this facility, you have to cover your face up in the middle of a global pandemic? And she rolled her eyes. She said, people will make an issue out of anything, right? So I said, well, if you want me to, I said, I wish I had more time. When I get more time, if this is still going on, if you want me to, I'd love to volunteer to come in and be your mask doorman and tell people cover your face up, right? Because at first, I thought covering my face up, I'm definitely going to do that. When we first started all this, to go outside and who knows who's going to breathe on me. Then we found out, well, it's not so much that we're wearing the mask for ourselves. It helps us not make other people sick. Well, I'm still wearing the fucking thing. Mentally, I think it gives me some fucking cover, but also I'm being goddamn a good citizen, right? So, and I guess it does help this story to know also, like Brian, that my more major episodes, things that get reported in the newspaper or are the subject of legal controversy when I lose my temper, generally it's because something has been building, right? Whether it's with that individual person or not, but I've been working too hard. Smoky Mountain Wrestling's down. I haven't had a lot of sleep. Possibly someone's been fucking with me that I feel that I'm particularly put out about because I feel that I've been particularly good to them in the past. Whatever the case may be, do your own math on it. Sometimes these things happen when I'm not in the proper mood to be out in public. So that helps to know that. So anyway, I go to the post office this morning, and by the way, folks, we'll do a merchandise update later. Don't want to drag the story down, but I go to the post office. I got the dolly, got the boxes inside. When I go in, I see that there are a couple people in line in the lobby, but they've spread out extra far, and I'm not going to argue with anybody that wants to do that. So the guy is right in the doorway of the post office lobby, and that, where you can't really get in unless you're infringing on his space. So I'm back behind where the people come in, the flow of traffic from the entry doors, right? You're going to have to form the line behind me. I'm giving this guy his room. A guy comes in. This guy is the epitome of a Republican. Now, whereas I'm in the post office ninja outfit, long pants, long sleeve windbreakers, zipped up, mask, latex gloves, this guy is coming in slacks, a short sleeve designer polo shirt, barehanded, nothing over his fucking face. And he's, as I said, he's the epitome of a Republican because he looks like Jeffrey Epstein, not the fucking prison pictures, but the partying on the yacht, and he's got the gray hair and he's very groomed Jeffrey Epstein. But I don't know if he's prematurely gray or he's about my age or whatever, but he's my height and my weight, which could figure into this story here in a minute. So he comes through and I back up to let him through, and he goes and he drops some of his stuff off in the box, the slot there, right? He's not going into the lobby, and he goes out the front doors. I go back to where I was. And a minute later, he comes in with one box, and he goes around me. He's going to stand in line. Fine. Guess where this non-mask wearing guy decides to stand in line behind me, Brian Last?
I don't know.
About 3 to 4 feet behind me. I turned around and looked over my shoulder. I said, buddy, if you ain't going to be wearing a mask, I'd appreciate it if you'd give me a little more space. Now, he can see that I can't crowd this guy nor the entry doors any further, right? I'm where I got to be at this particular point in this fucking exchange. But he looks down, and where they've got the every 6 feet fucking markers says, well, I'm standing where I'm supposed to be. He, of course, ignored the sign on the front door if he's a big deal with fucking following directions where you're supposed to be wearing a fucking mask before you come in this joint, right? But that he ain't thinking about that now. He says, I'm standing where I'm supposed to be. I said, well, since I can't go anywhere without infringing on him, I think I'd appreciate it if you'd back up a couple feet. And I turn around, and he makes a half-hearted attempt to, take the step back, but he gives me the 2 feet. And I turn back around. I'm standing, I turned back around and I said, is this conversation still ongoing? I had assumed that we were finished. I thought this interaction was over with. Is there a problem or something that needs to be brought up I need to know anything else about? You know what he said to me, Brian?
No.
He said, why don't you turn around and mind your own business? And I said to him, well, motherfucker, it is my goddamn business if you want to come over here and slobber your fucking germs on me without covering your fucking face up. So I didn't realize this exchange was still going on. It can continue or it cannot. It's up to you. Brian, do you know what he said then to me?
I do not, no.
He said, what are you, a tough guy? I shoved that fucking metal dolly over, boom, and goddamn said, no, motherfucker, I'm a crazy guy that don't give a fuck right here, right now, because I'm fed the fuck up, and one of us is going to jail, and the other one's going to the hospital, and we're going to work it out right now. At this point, I don't think that he assumed that this was going to escalate this quickly. And he had the kind of look on his face that indicated that he did not know that this was going to escalate this quickly.
Of course.
As did the fucking manager of the post office, who comes out the door and running around the corner, and he sees me. I've dropped fucking 40 grand in there since January 1st, right? And this other guy. And I'm sorry. I said, you fucking slobbering fuck. I will fucking turn your brand. The words fuck and cocksucker are enveloping through the fucking room. And Bree's looking around now. And here comes Lib. And now I know what a lot of people are thinking. Cornette, you're old. You got a lot of injuries. Here's the fucking deal at this exact moment. If this was one of the boys or a member of the Gracie family, it probably wouldn't have gone this far. But at this point, A, I'm on the edge of losing control of what the fuck I'm doing to begin with, which is how I get myself in these other issues. And B, this guy just had smart-ass words with somebody he's never seen before in the fucking post office lobby, and I don't know if he's willing to even risk the fact of going to jail or the hospital for it, but I myself am envisioning a bunch of fucking people that have been fucking with me from far, far away, but he's standing right in front of me, and I see that goddamn metal fucking sign that holds up the deal that says ship your packages efficiently with the U.S. Post Office, that I can turn right upside down and swing like a baseball bat and bash his brains into fucking jelly. Upon which, if anybody pries that away from me, I can start going for his fucking eyeballs and try to get my fingers 1 or 2 knuckles deep in those before anybody else fucking does anything about it. And at that point, I've lost complete control of what I'm doing, and I'm willing to fucking do that. So that's the advantage that I have over this motherfucker at this fucking point in time. So fuck him. So at that point, the manager goes over to this guy and grabs his packages, and he takes him somewhere I don't know. I fucking said fucking a few more times. I don't actually remember what I said to the guy as he was going down the hallway there, grabbed my shit, turned it over, and wheeled it into fucking ship, at which point, miraculously, the rest of the lobby was somehow empty. Even though when I had turned around to speak to this gentleman, there was a few people in line and I couldn't get in the door, I wheeled right up to the fucking desk at that point. But you know what? I'm sorry. But especially if I'm wearing a fucking wet goddamn sock over my face to protect you fucking cretins out there, all you non-mask wearing fuckers, as far as I told, was it you I told, or was it on the air here? Was it Bree I told a few weeks ago? Non-mask wear is going to be the new hate crime. Because if you don't want to cover your fucking slobbering face up and you get anywhere in a 6-foot radius of me and do not take one polite request to back the fuck up, I will bash you over the head with something, because fuck you. You don't seem to be fucking minding giving me a goddamn deadly possible disease. You don't seem to have any respect or fucking sympathy or fucking consideration for me. So fuck you, you Republican cocksuckers, because that's all it is, once again, is these science denying. Did you see the goddamn, from Florida, obviously, of course, the town or city hall meeting or one of those things they do on cable access where they let everybody get up and fucking speak, and there were the fucking middle-aged white twats in their fucking Trump t-shirts saying that God gave us a precious gift of breath that we shouldn't cover up, and it's against God's will to wear masks. Or the fucking goofs in the supermarket throwing their shit out of their basket because people tell them wear a fucking mask while people are around buying their fucking food. If you're in a goddamn grocery store not wearing a mask and you're fucking around people are buying food to take home for themselves, you ought to be hauled off to fucking jail for attempting to poison people's food supply. And also for being an inconsiderate Republican science-denying fuck, you pieces of shit. So don't be expecting to be anywhere near me without something covering up your slobbery fucking mouth is the point of this fucking story, or shit will take place.
Well, it's unfortunate that this man that you accosted in the post office didn't have an attorney standing by to take care of action.
What? Are you trying to get me sued?
You sound unhinged.
Well, if I would need defense, I was fighting for my life from a poisoner, from an infector, from a typhoid Larry who was trying to spread disease and pestilence and germs all over the goddamn United States Postal Service. I was defending myself. I need somebody to defend my rights as an innocent, face-covering, mask-wearing, non-sick fucking motherfucker.
Okay, well, you know what? You've convinced me, and now I have an idea for you. I know an attorney that could get down there and take care of business and protect you and protect your face and your gloves and your hazmat suit and everything else. There's only one man who can do this.
Who?
I was going to say that. That man is...
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. And show or two. Still to the rest.
Oh, boy, I tell you, boy, shoot up here amongst us because one of us needs some relief. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, no, he does not take frivolous cases from post office scuffles between honest mask-wearing citizens and nasty, barefaced Republicans. And he doesn't take just every old Tom's dick is hairy case where now it's become fashionable to be sued by the greatest attorney in modern legal jurisprudence, especially when you don't have anything to take, because he'll take everything you got unless you got nothing. And if you're in that position, well, that's probably why you're fucking pissing people off. But anyway, if you have a legitimate claim, if you have been wronged by a major corporation or a big business or a governmental agency or anybody who has somehow harmed you or your family, poisoned your air and your atmosphere, your water. We talked about it, I think, last week on the program. There's pretty much an entire town in West Virginia that has cancer because of the negligence and the shortcuts and the greed of one of these mining companies that left closed up dangerous chemicals in the ground that leached into people's water and poisoned the town water supply. It sounds like the Old West, right? It still happens. And these people think they can fly under the radar if they go somewhere out in the woods in West Virginia. Well, Stephen P. News searches these infringers and impingers and various I started to say fornicators. I guess that's not the right word. These horrible people. And he brings them to justice. And he's representing pretty much everybody in the whole town. 888-692-8084 is the number to call. newlawoffice.com is the place to go. Get even with Stephen. And if he can get even for a whole town, he's like one of those Old West gunslingers. They bring him in, he runs all the bad guys out of a whole town. He can sure do it for just you or your individual family, unless you're very prolific. If you've got more people than a town in your immediate family, you may have other issues to worry about. newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He takes the right side in these post office scuffles, Brian. I'm trying to do the right thing for once. I'm trying to be a good citizen.
For once.
Everybody's got to start sometime. Use my left and right turn indicator, wear a mask, and what do I get for it? Nothing but misery and grief. And there I was at the post office, by the way, sending out the packages to the fine folks, the customers at Cornette's Collectibles. I can say that name now because the store site is still down on purpose. The website is up while we prepare the new one for the fall. It's going to be bigger and better than ever. It's going to be huge. But the store is still down and will be for what is today? Today is it July 1st yet?
Tuesday the 30th.
Tuesday, it might as well be July 1st. Middle of July, we're opening back up because now all of the internationals and all of the domestics, and I know some people have said, well, you said that before. Well, we hung up on the last Mid-Atlantic sets. But all the domestics and all the internationals ordered by June 14th are now officially winging their way to people, except for a few of those pesky address confirmations. And the folks that ordered the figures on June 15th and blew everything on the internet up, those figures are starting to go out by the end of the week, and they will be going out for the next 7 days after that. By the end of next week, everything ordered will be in the mail. And then we are restocking. We are trying to streamline. We are getting new systems, practices in place. Everything will still be legitimately autographed by me, custom to order. And you will still have to wait for a reasonable period of time, but we're getting ahead of all this stuff and trying to take a swing at it again and see how long we can keep up with it this time when we open up again mid-July.
You should take bets.
What did we used to have? Well, we should get those betting sponsors, the gambling sponsor we had to put us on the betting line there. We never did figure out how to work that.
While sports are down, bet on how long Cornette's Collectibles will be up.
Yeah, but before it snows me under again and I say, fuck it, I'm cutting it off so I can catch up. We're going to make it at least 6 weeks this time. Last time was only a month and it blew up again.
We'll see. All right.
All right, what do we do on this program?
We answer questions sent in by the listeners. And while I'm compiling these here, I guess, because sometimes you hit me with this in the middle of the
While
show.
you're compiling them,
well,
don't you days before these programs, don't you prepare extensively? Don't you have huge production meetings with Charlie from Starkville to find out what you're supposed to say on this program?
Charlie from Starkville sends in some questions. Unfortunately, there's a few thousand other people sending in questions, so we've never received the amount of questions we've been receiving so far in 2020.
You're trying to just now sift through those right now. I got an email. I get hundreds of emails, and I only read a portion, but every once in a while, one strikes me.
All right.
Would you like me to read that? It's from a viewer.
Okay.
Scott, Soulless Scott from Simpsonville, South Carolina. He's one of the members of the cult of Cornette that has no soul because we just can't see the entertainment in the football field fuckery in the modern wrestling. And Scott says, Jim, in the first few years of my son's life, he was really into WWE, so much so that I finally made it to a WrestleMania, a trip we booked right after it was announced that you were inducting the Rock and Roll Express into the Hall of Fame that year. Now, despite a bunch of stupid video games and YouTube videos that he still loves, pro wrestling in 2020 is just too stupid for my 9-year-old to watch. I'm pretty thankful for that because I feel the same way. I feel bad for my kid, though, in the sense that when I was 9 years old, it was 1983, and I was going to the Greenville Memorial Auditorium every Monday night down in Greenville, South Carolina. How could I not have fallen in love with wrestling? The most detrimental difference in wrestling between then and now for me is quite simple. Back then, wrestling was mocked and made fun of by people who weren't fans. I didn't give a shit about those people. I still don't give a shit about those people. But the problem now is that it's the wrestlers and commentators who are doing it. I guess I was just spoiled to grow up at a time and a place where Ole Anderson could get stabbed on his way back to the locker room and cut a promo on it the next week on TV. I want wrestlers who are stab-worthy again. I want wrestlers who'd rather play fuck all night than Fortnite. I assume by the usage that Fortnite is probably a video game.
It's a very popular video game, yes.
Okay, very good. I know those days are long gone. I just never realized they'd be this far gone as to what wrestling has become today. I wish they didn't even call it that anymore. They can call it sports entertainment, I suppose, even though it isn't sports and it damn sure isn't entertaining. But thanks for keeping us in the loop each week on the diamonds in the rough, or possibly turds in the punch bowl. No, such as FTR and MJF. You know, when you think about it, that's what FTR and MJF are now to the rest of the modern wrestling bunch. They're turds in their punch bowl. They're the only ones left that are still showing people what it's supposed to look like and how it's supposed to be done. And they make everybody else on the show look bad because nobody else can fucking do it.
Yeah.
Well, boy, don't go into an editorial. All right, I'm done. You take over.
Turds in the punch bowl. Well, let's get a question here. This was sent in the CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
Oh, God. You are single-handedly going to drive people away from the program with your under-the-table, tit-for-tat, quid pro quo arrangement of whatever you have with Charlie from Starkville, Mississippi.
Well, this is a very topical question. It's one that several people have sent in, although Charlie put his sentences and words together in a more coherent manner than some others have. But here's the question.
Well, what does Charlie want to know this week?
Hi, Jim. Loki recently went on Twitter to rant about how it is his right to not wear a mask. Loki said, quote, "You have zero right to tell me I must wear a mask, take a vaccine, or socially distance from others who also choose not to do these things. Life is about choices, and in the information age, ignorance is a choice. I choose not to be ignorant." What are your thoughts on Loki's take on the pandemic?
Well, what he said didn't make any sense because he just contradicted himself. He's choosing to be ignorant and then says he's choosing not to be ignorant. He doesn't believe that you should be wearing a mask to not spread germs like the doctors and nurses do professionally because they work with germs. This is A guy, what is his? I mean, obviously, everybody was wondering, like, oh, which side is Cornette going to come down on mask wearing after the first 10 minutes of the program? But I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about here. I said in one of our more famous videos, the time I was called Loki the stupidest motherfucker in wrestling, the time he knocked the guy out and then continued the match with the corpse, right? Like it looked like fucking Weekend at Bernie's.
Okay, you know what? Several people, I said several people sent in questions. Several mentioned, Jim previously said he's the stupidest motherfucker in wrestling. And I couldn't remember what it was that actually caused you to say that.
Yeah. Well, but that was a wrestling match. In a wrestling, it was just stupid wrestling. But then I've known him for a while. We've never been friends, but I've worked with him in a number of places. But then this past year, he was in MLW. And the guy keeps himself in shape. And he can work. He just, unfortunately, even though he tries his best to carry it off, he works like he's Braun Strowman, like he's a huge giant. But his work is solid. And his shit was making sense. And he was having good matches and working hard, and they were having him come into production meetings. I'm like, well, maybe he's grown in the business or whatever. And I enjoyed working with him because he was one of the guys you didn't have to he wasn't green, so you didn't have to really break it down into granular detail on positioning and things and such and psychology. So I thought, wow, he's really come a long way. And then he's no, I don't want to wear a mask, and you should not enforce that on me if I don't want. It's not for you, motherfucker. It's for us. It's for everybody else, so you don't breathe on them. And that's with these fucking idiots that want to go to spring break or summer break or whatever the kids are going to at this time of year and go slather all over each other on the beach or the bars. Or these goofs that want to just, go out like his fucking jack off this morning because you think, you believe in your fucking idiot president or in the goof conspiracy shit on the fucking internet and you think it's all overblown. Fuck all of you. Just because you're fucking stupid doesn't mean that you have the right to breathe on me. So there you hold on one second. There we go. I've turned that off. Anyway, so point is, what?
Well, it was very casual the way you turned off the phone.
Yeah, well, fuck this guy. He's left me a message. I didn't get back to him. I ought to have told him something. So anyway, is he one of these anti-vaccine people? Is he one of these? I couldn't imagine low-key to be a right-wing Trump lover. So well, what actually, is his?
The quote that Charlie gave us was just part of the quote.
Are you fucking kidding? When a fucker gets hung up on around here, that usually means I can't do it right now. Don't try again.
I'm assuming that was Loki on the phone.
No, that was a guy that now ain't going to get called back at all.
You think he'll call a third time?
If he does, it might be interesting.
Well, apparently Charlie only put part of the quote from Loki. It was an image. I don't know if this is something Loki wrote or just something he copied and pasted to Twitter, but it says, respect is a two-way street. I respect your right to remain ignorant, be ruled by fear, and not by logic or intelligence, wear a mask, socially distance that ultimately harms your health now, and in the future, provided I do not pay for your bad decisions.
Wait a minute. What? So he's saying if you stay away, don't, hold on.
This is a horrible sentence.
This fucking guy is trying to say if you don't wear a mask and don't stay away from people and don't socially distance, it's better for your health.
I'm going to read this again, and I'm going to try to break it down. There's no period, but there are plenty of commas. I respect your right to remain ignorant, comma. Be ruled by fear and not by logic or intelligence, comma. Wear a mask, comma. Socially distance, and that's in quotes. Socially distance that ultimately harms your health now and, comma, in the future, comma, provided I do not pay for your bad decisions. This is a mess. But there's more.
Okay, I hope so.
I respect my own health enough to expose my immune system to the world by shaking hands and embracing people as we have for thousands of years to build our immune systems to fight against disease now and in the future. You have zero, in caps, zero right to tell me that I must wear a mask, take a vaccine, or socially distance, once again, in quotes, socially distance from others who also choose not to do these things. Life is about choices, and in the information age, ignorance is a choice. I choose not to be ignorant. See, the last line is the problem there. I choose not to be ignorant.
Yeah. So you know what? Here's the thing. For thousands of years, our immune systems, until antibiotics came around about 70 or 80 years ago, you fucking dumb shit, it wasn't very good either. And the regular flu killed 100 million people in 1918, for fuck's sake. So, but Loki doesn't have to worry. Because we will all be socially distanced, especially me and him from now on. And God damn it. So he's saying everybody should just glom on each other, hug on each other, and let our natural immune systems and fie upon you if you tell him to wear a mask and not slobber all over other people.
Who are you going to listen to, Dr. Fauci or Dr. Loki?
Well, Dr. Fauci versus Dr. Loki. There you go. I'll be in Fauci's corner.
Who's bigger?
Dr. Fauci's taller. He's probably not as stocky, but Fauci is taller.
All right. Well, let's get another question here. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Matthew Miller. Hi, Jim. I was wondering on your thoughts.
Hi, Matthew.
I was wondering on your thoughts about Sammy Guevara's suspension from AEW, and many people have sent in this question.
Well, once again, you're suspended from appearing on TV on Wednesday nights, right? And so that's not a drastic punishment like they'd give you in the NFL where you get fined, the equivalent of $10 million for 40 games or whatever. But it was a stupid thing to say. And of course he admitted it, and he admitted, well, I was a stupid 21-year-old kid that said a stupid thing. But why would you say that to somebody if you weren't even on a broadcast? Why would, this brings up the whole is rape funny thing, and can rape be joked about? And Carlin did the bit, right? He says, people say rape can't be joked about, rape can't be funny. Well, imagine Elmer Fudd raping Porky Pig. And then he does, and of course, then that's funny, right? But this was not even a joke. It was not even Rodney Dangerfield. I said this, I stole this in 1986, said it about Baby Doll. I said, a guy broke into Baby Doll's apartment last week. She yelled, rape. He yelled, no. That's still funny. But this wasn't funny. It was just a horrible thing why would you? I don't understand. You could have said, boy, I would, I'd save her from raping myself, or from being raped. I'd restrain myself and even try to make a joke out of it. And that'd probably get heat. But just, wow, I wanted to rape her. Who says that? Especially on the fucking air. And old Uncle Dave said that was a fucking a figure of speech that was used years ago or by young people or whatever. I was never fucking, I was young before that then. But no, I don't, normally if he had tried to make a joke, even if it wasn't funny, I'd halfway take up for him, obviously. But it wasn't even just trying to make a joke. It was just like, what the fuck? I was like, why didn't he say, I'd like to sodomize her? That's the same fucking thing. It doesn't sound good either. So it's just stupid. But he was a stupid 21-year-old kid, for fuck's sake. So now that he's got a goddamn job and actually doing good, somebody wants to we'll get him too. Where do you draw the line with it? It was a stupid thing say from a kid who said he was stupid. I don't think he ought to be fired or fucking run out of town on a rail.
All things being equal, I think he handled it quite well. He apologized to Sasha Banks. They had a phone conversation. I guess AEW is going to send him to... What are they sending him to?
I don't know.
They're sending him to classes, but I'm trying to remember the name of the classes.
Well, what? A class don't say stupid shit? How do you do a class on don't saying stupid shit?
Sensitivity classes, maybe. That's what it was. To be sensitive to other people and other people's needs.
But you know what? Here's the thing. to be sensitive to fucking, it's called life and growing up. It wasn't like he did actually assault anyone or attempt to assault anyone or perpetrate anything physical or even fucking say something to somebody in the same room. He said something stupid on a show, but he apparently thought somehow was a compliment. So fucking suspend him and cost him a little money. He apologized to the person he said it about, and apparently she's not mad now because he apologized and handled it well. Is she still hot? Is she like, fuck you, or is she like, okay?
Well, I'm sure she wasn't happy about it, but it appears that she accepted his apology, and I'm sure
she's not calling for sanctions to be placed on him. She's happy with what he's done.
No, and I'm going to assume, we weren't on that phone call, but I'm going to assume she let him know what she thinks about it.
Well,
and then she moved on, it seems.
Okay, so what the fuck? At this point, what do you do when you send somebody to a fucking sensitivity training instead of just saying, don't say fucking stupid shit about people, unless you're like me and you don't give a fuck. You'll make a heel. You'll make like Mexican Joker. If you send somebody to classes they got to sit through because they said one stupid thing as a rookie pro wrestler on a podcast 4 years ago, and they got to go to these classes to learn what all the fuck it is they might learn there. I have no idea. He said something wrong. He apologized to the person he said it about. She took it. He got fucking reprimanded by his employer. But classes on how not to say a stupid thing on a wrestling podcast.
Well, here's the actual release from.
If I was sitting in belong about the third class, I'd be like, I will murder everybody that caused me to come here.
Well, here's the statement from AEW. AEW insists on doing our part to create a world of understanding and respect for humankind. We therefore strongly condemn the extremely offensive and hurtful words of Sammy Guevara. As such, effective immediately, Sammy is suspended without pay until further notice. Sammy has agreed to undergo extensive sensitivity training, and, upon completion, his future status within the company will be reevaluated.
Oh, for God's sake.
During his suspension, his salary will be donated to the Women's Center of Jacksonville.
Well, there you go. He's already spent some money on it. And he's apologized, etc. The extensive sensitivity training. Did Sammy Guevara's words shock the world? Did they punish Michael Vick this badly in the NFL for fucking dogfighting?
Well, Michael Vick went to prison.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Because if we're talking about Sammy Guevara saying one stupid thing on a podcast 4 years ago, or Michael Vick, Michael Vick needs to get the worst end of the deal by far, obviously. Anyway, what the fuck? I'm not even defending what he said. I said what he said was stupid. But have we all lost our grip on what the fuck? How are you going to take a guy who feels bad already? Has his attitude been a problem up till now? Apparently not. What do they think he's going to learn that he hadn't learned in the 4 years since he said something stupid on a fucking podcast? And suddenly now he's a horrible person who needs to be retrained. That's ridiculous.
What is it? What is extensive sensitivity training?
I don't know.
What do you think they make you do?
Is it like one of those fucking camps that they sent Butters to be not gay? You don't watch South Park, do you?
I don't know what you're talking about. No.
Yeah. One of the gay conversion summer camp that they sent Butters to, but Cartman loved the facilities, so he said he was gay, or maybe he was an addict. I can't remember. But anyway, I don't have a clue what it is. And why would anybody? Because why would either somebody's an asshole or they're not. And if they're an asshole around a lot of people extensively, then I guess you should ask them not to be an asshole. But I don't know how you can train someone not to be an asshole.
I imagine it's kind of like a defensive driving course. You just have to sit there for 6 hours and watch videos and answer questions.
So now we know apparently your driving record is suspect.
Oh no, my driving record's fine, but if you take a defensive driving course...
Then how do you know what these fucking...
Because I've done it several times. I think you could do it, I was about to say 3 years, maybe it's every 6 years, and it cuts 20% off your car insurance.
Wait a minute, hold on. You mean to tell me that you can save 20% on your car insurance?
Maybe it's 10%. Now I'm doubting everything.
Hold on one second. I'm getting right on the phone. I'll be right back.
It might be 10% now that I think about it.
They won't do it.
What?
They won't do it.
Who won't do it?
The insurance company. They won't take 20% off my.
I'm just wondering. I'm like, should I edit this? I don't know where he went. But there
I
you
was
go.
checking.
You didn't know that if you take a defensive driving course, you save money on your insurance?
I wasn't aware of that.
And if you have points, it shaves points off your license.
I don't have any points or anything bad now because I don't drive anywhere anymore. But years ago, 30 years ago, but see, that's how I got around that because I always kept my Kentucky license when I lived in Louisiana. 13 speeding tickets in a 12-month period, and none of them made it back to Kentucky in the pre-computer days.
How many wrestlers lost their licenses from the time that you were around?
I mean, there was some. I won't say everybody in Louisiana at one time or another had license issues, but everybody who moved there and had a state license had an issue because then they were getting the information. I know this Ric Flair spent time without license. Back in the 70s, for a while, he and Valentine were renting limousines to go to the shows when they were the World Tag Team Champions, and part of it may have been because of his speeding record.
Yeah, I was about to say, wasn't Len Denton actually once Flair's driver? Because he was like an undercard guy or, just starting out in the territory and Flair couldn't drive anywhere.
Yeah. And it was hard you had to do a lot of speeding to lose your license in the Carolinas in those days because the cops knew who everybody was, right? And all the wrestlers, because they saw them every week going to these towns and driving fast. And one time I got pulled over. He said, "Oh, you're one of Crockett's guys, right? Well, here." And he opened his glove compartment. He said, "Here, I've got about 30 or 40 of these buttons for our local kids program. They're $1 a piece." I said, "Well, here's $40. Just give me all those buttons." And then he'd let you go. Or, if they sometimes, especially well-known guys that travel those roads a lot, like the Briscoes and Wahoo, in those days, the cops sometimes would pull up beside them and flash their lights just to say hello and then kind of give them a little escort. It was, but anyway, it was a simpler time. But yeah, what were we talking about?
Wrestlers losing their driver's license.
No, we were talking about Sammy Guevara. Yeah, see, you lost me, and then I lost you.
Well, let's see who we could lose with our next question. This was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Ethan. What are your thoughts on the Best of 7 series with Nikita Koloff and Magnum TA?
Well, that was brief and to the point. That was huge that summer. Magnum was so hot during that 86. Well, everybody was hot, but especially on that side of the fence, Dusty, Magnum, and the Road Warriors and the Rock and Roll Express was just like the murderer's row of baby faces. I don't know at any point in time where almost anybody was as popular as any individual one of those guys, and they were all in the same place at the same time. And as we mentioned here on one of the programs we've done recently, we've done so many, Nikita was so hot from 85 to 87. And, Dusty just took the best aspects of Ivan Koloff's legacy and the Dolph Lundgren, fucking Russian in the Rocky movie. And, Nikita, he was huge and worked the gimmick. The first 2 years, Nikita was so dedicated to the gimmick. We've talked about it. He used the accent on Crockett's plane with just the boys, and he never spoke in public. And all he did was go to the gym and work. And the stories were when he got there in 84, he didn't cash his paychecks for a year. Cat Collins, a friend of mine, was one of his roommates, and I think Don Kernodle spent some time with him. They said all he did was lift weights, work out, and wrestle, and he would put his paychecks up on his headboard in his bedroom and didn't cash them for months at a time because he didn't spend any money. He was just like, he was the whole fucking gimmick, right? He was really into it. Then after a few years, he started to get cosmopolitan and start wearing nice clothes and nice shoes, and Arn started calling him GQ Ball. And he grew his hair back out, and he wasn't so jacked. He lost some weight. It was still in great shape, but he wasn't, cartoonly big, and he just lost and he started cashing his checks, by the way. They actually had to call him and say, hey, can you cash these fucking checks the first year? And he started doing that, but he lost the purpose on the gimmick. But anyway, at the time, they were just so over. And they promoted it nationally on TBS and mentioned the Best of 7 series that was taking place across the country on syndication. And it became a big thing because even in those days, most of the people in the house shows didn't realize that the extent to which we had those matches in other cities. They saw tapes from other cities. It made the promotion look big, but they didn't know that up and down the card, the same people were meeting in a lot of cases and all over the place, right? But they thought that, their individual house show was it. But when the Best of 7 series was advertised on television in that way, and it had a sports-based feel to it, and these guys are so fucking into this U.S. title and mad at each other that it's gonna be the best of 7 to decide it. And then it made each person who went to those individual shows, it made those matches more important because they thought, we have no idea who's gonna win. Normally, we'd know the fucking title probably won't change hands at a house show, even though back then it did, just enough to give the people hope. But the result of each one of the matches was important to those people that were there, and so the babyface could win. Flat 1, 2, 3, or the heel might fuck him or whatever, but they didn't know. So it was a great deal. Once again, you can't do that with everything all the time. You need a hot program for an important title with 2 guys that are over. And you need you can't just say Best of 7 on TV. Well, that'd be kind of fucking long and drawn out. And, just Best of 7 now, there's no giant house show tours in big arenas that mean anything. But the concept would work if you had those things in place and didn't overdo it. It was great. And the people were with it right down to the end.
All right, our next question, Jim, sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Garrett Hernandez. I was rummaging through my old wrestling magazine collection and came across a bit from September 1995 between you, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Mantar, in which you hired the future Triple H to teach your beast proper table manners and etiquette. The piece ended with a banana cream pie in your face. Any stories from this shooting, and whose idea was it?
Oh, God. Yes, I do. And whose idea it was, I don't know. Old Shitstain was around at the magazine at that time. But we didn't have heat at that point. But it was a deal where the people at the magazine were always trying to figure out something they could take, or they could write about or do that would be away from wrestling and something humorous and entertaining or whatever the fuck. And they've made it a goddamn, and especially under Russo, as big a joke as the TV show was turning into. And because I was with Mantar the one time on television, naturally, they thought, okay, well, this was like that same fucking, I think I may have been with Mantar in Pennsylvania, because I know this was Wheeling, West Virginia, that we did this. So it was probably the same set of tapings. They said, "Wait, come over to the goddamn such and such hotel, and we're going to do this photo feature where Hunter Hearst Helmsley, who at that time was just starting out as the, rich snob from Greenwich, is going to try to teach your man Mantar manners." And I'm like, what the fuck? I've got to go to the fucking TV in Wheeling to begin with. Obviously that's not a surprise, but instead of just going to the building, I got to go around downtown fucking Wheeling and find this hotel and go spend an hour or an hour and a half doing this fucking photo shoot. And then when I get there, they want me to end up with the pie in the face. I'm like, what the fuck? I've got my TV clothes here. So I had to go back out in the fucking, as I recall, in my rental car and rummage around in my bag and wear some fucking sweated in stuff to get the pie in the face so that I could change and do it was stupid. And it's not like Mantar was happy to be there. He was happy to be anywhere. It wasn't like fucking Helmsley wanted to do it at that point either. But at the same time, he still figured, well, at least I'm in the magazine. But it just, just make it up as they go along, like they were doing, some of those things, and take some pictures, and then off we go. And then I got lost trying to get to the fucking building because I mentioned downtown Wheeling, West Virginia is fucking ignorant as far as how to get around in that. It all looks the same.
Do you think people should include that moment of your face in that cake the same way they include all the other ones in the list of famous cakes that you've had?
No. Just say famous pastries or baked goods, whether it be pies or cakes or whatever. No, that is the sum total of times that I got a pie or cake in the face that it didn't draw money. That one right there.
All right. Well, our next question was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Mark in Markville, Mississippi.
Oh, for God's sake. Now that has to be some kind of nom de plume. Or assumed name. You're a Mark from Markville. That's too convenient, fella. Especially when Charlie is from Starkville.
I don't know Mississippi as well as you do, so I can't really.
You're saying Markville is so far away from Starkville it couldn't possibly be the same guy.
I'm saying I don't know the map of Mississippi. I don't know where these towns are. You would. Well,
hold on one second. Wait a minute. Hold on one second. Hold on. Let me just get my Randy McNally out here.
Shouldn't that atlas be in the car?
I've got one in the car, but I don't want to go to the car every time I need to look up where something is. Now, let's just see here. Hold on. I'm just going to go to the index, and I'm going to determine how far Markville is from Starkville, Mississippi. Okay, Starkville, E9. All right. You play the game show music while I'm doing that.
Yeah, I don't have any game show music.
Yeah, Starkville is E9. So,
E9.
Oh, I was not aware that Starkville, wait a minute, all the way over. So Starkville is right near Columbus. Yes, it is, right near Columbus, Mississippi. Well, I never knew that.
That answers a question everyone's been asking.
Well, now let's see where Markville is.
Let's see.
Because Markville better be a long way away. There is no Markville, Mississippi.
What year is this atlas?
There's Marks and there's Marshall County.
What year?
What year?
Yeah, what year is this atlas?
Hold on, I'll tell you. 2006.
So it's out of date.
I haven't changed this one in the office in a while, I guess. Wait a minute, are you saying they built a whole town in the last 14 years?
I don't know if they built a whole town, but maybe some residents of other places got together, started their own community, and it's turned into Marksville, Mississippi. All right, well, here's...
I feel like we're in the middle of a fucking bad Karnak the Magnificent bit, McMahon. All right, give me that question.
This question's from Mark in Markville, Mississippi. What are your thoughts on Dusty Rhodes' daughter going after the WWE on Twitter, saying that WWE needs to cut her mother a check for using the Great American Bash name? And what do you think about the way intellectual property worked out in the 80s and 90s in wrestling versus today?
Well, I didn't hear about this.
I didn't hear about it either, but
okay.
I don't follow Dusty Rhodes' daughter on Twitter, so I wouldn't know.
Well, but she's a fine young lady. And they're right. You know, that's why Cody was putting out trademarks on as much stuff as he could that his dad came up with that they hadn't trademarked. What did he say? He was trying to get some of his dad's cattle back. And they're still using the Great American Bash. Everybody knows that was Dusty's. Having said that, you're right. The copyright on the 80s stuff in general and all wrestling stuff has always been suspect or in litigation or littered with holes and loopholes and errors or whatever. And then there has to be a thing or a consideration because Dusty was employed by Crockett. If they had modern employment contracts in those days, Crockett would have owned the stuff.
That's right.
And then he would have sold it to TBS, and TBS would have sold it to Vince, and Vince would own it anyway. So they can look at it from that standpoint, but it's like at the same time, all the great blues artists and or, especially back in the 60s, the budding rock and roll stars, when in the dawn of the time where there was big, big money in music, they all got fucked on their first
contracts,
or a lot of their intellectual property or a lot of their songs or whatever. It happens.
But that's not this, though. You just laid out what it actually is. Dusty was an executive for Jim Crockett Promotions, came up with the concept for Jim Crockett Promotions. The intellectual property would have lied with Jim Crockett Promotions and then transferred over to Turner once that purchase happened, and then later on to the WWE once that purchase happened. WWE, I'm not one to not slam them wherever there's a point to slam them, but they've done nothing wrong here, I don't think.
Well, yeah, and that's exactly where you jumped in on me for the first time on the show today, in a place where I didn't need it, where I could have used it before, and you jumped in and you were so quick to tell me, Jim Cornette, to stop this. But I was saying there has been those instances, and so that's why that a lot of people are sympathetic to the need, the screwed artist, right? They always come off as the baby face. Siegel and Schuster didn't get paid for Superman, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why there's the natural inclination for all the fans, because they don't like the big businesses and the evil promoters. They like the guys like the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. So they're going to be on their side. But in actuality, as you just pointed out, they didn't do anything wrong. But what should have been done in a lot of these cases is that some of the people that even have the rights to this stuff didn't trademark it or copyright it or whatever. I mean, I've heard tales from people who have gone back and researched it, that major promotions that were big in their day and, ran the territories for years and years never actually trademarked their own name or copyrighted anything, right? It was just it was start up a carnival or a circus or Wild West or the wrestling. So there's a lot of loophole. And there wasn't a lot of, there was no merchandise to speak of in those days. There was no video to speak of, rights and or home video in those days until the latter half of the 80s when things started blowing up. So all the stuff beforehand, that's why they didn't save the tapes. But there was not a lot of paperwork done in the wrestling business since the dawn of time, for probably in some cases obvious reasons. So there you go. But in this case, if it had worked out that way, yes, the stuff would have the stuff that Vince has from TBS, which came from Crockett, would all be Vince's anyway.
Our next question, Jim, sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Charlie in Waterford, Connecticut. Excuse me.
Oh!
Waterford, Connecticut. Excuse me, I can't speak.
Not Waltherford.
Waterford, Connecticut. Recently, I saw a letter online from August 19th, 1998, that was sent to John Cherry, who was the director of the Ernest movies. There was going to be an Ernest WWE movie.
Oh, God.
Does Jim know anything about this, and does he have any stories about fellow Kentuckian Jim Varney?
Don't blame me. Actually, now that is, because I had no idea where that was going when the question started. Actually, I seem to remember the announcement that there was going to be some kind of fucking Ernest Goes to Wrestling movie. I don't know whether it's something that I read in a newsletter or newspaper, or whether I actually heard there at the time. I don't think it went very far. Obviously, it didn't happen, and it's a little too late for that now. But I really don't know that much about it, and that's the only thing that jogged my memory was hearing that question. But no, I don't care whether he was from Kentucky or Pittsburgh or whatever. I'm sure he was a nice person in real life. I never met him, but I always hated that fucking Ernest. I didn't think it was funny. It fucking got old quick. It was the Southern version of Andrew Dice Clay. It started out way too hot and got old quick. There you have that.
And that's your knowledge of the WWE Ernest movie.
Yes. The entire detailed granularly detailed knowledge of the WWE Ernest movie.
All right, Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Philip Wright. I was recently reviewing some footage of the Dynamite Kid on YouTube, and wow! I was always a fan of the British Bulldogs, but I never got to see Dynamite as a single.
Oh, shit.
He had some incredible matches, and I never knew he wrestled Macho Man in the WWE, in which I think is awesome, as I'm also a big fan of Macho Man. Also, it's like Loki wrote this. My question.
Now, don't insult the man.
I'm sorry, Philip. My question is,
you're the heel on this program. I'm the baby face.
My question is, in your opinion, how great was he? Do you think he gets the full credit he deserves for his contributions to the business? When I look at Chris Benoit and Davey Richards, I can't help but be reminded of Dynamite, as they are almost mirror images of him. Also, I thought the Undertaker invented the Tombstone Piledriver, but maybe Dynamite invented it, as he was using it before his WWE run.
Well, first of all, my God, who invented that? Would go back in Mexico to the 40s, right? The Tombstone.
It's been around. It's not, Dynamite Kid didn't invent it.
Yes. Andre did a pretty mean tombstone when he was a young man in Montreal, from what the Andre book said. Here's the thing. I guess now a lot of people are the younger crowd, the younger audience, even though Dynamite is not only around, it was around in the 80s WWF and video era, but the Japanese stuff, but maybe they just didn't know to look, because he's not talked about, for the last 30 years. But at the time in the 80s, I think all the smart fans, like all 5,000 of them around the world, universally considered Dynamite the best worker in the business in ring. A lot of the guys that had been around him and knew what the fuck was up knew that he was the best, in-ring, athletic, convincing, wildest ass bump taking performer, but was also, a somewhat unhappy, miserable, sharp, ribber when he wanted to be, a troubling person sometimes behind the scenes to people. Probably would not have lasted long in today's environment, just for the variety of harsh things he would do to people. When you could watch those matches with Tiger Mask, that's when I first got my first VCRs, and that was the rage. And everybody now is going to be saying, oh, well, Cornette liked the flippy stuff then. They were doing, and Brian, you can help because you came along the generation after, but you've studied the tapes extensively. You can help me try to explain, if I can't, that these guys were so incredible, so athletic. Their work was so good and believable that they were doing these outrageous moves, but it seemed still somehow real. It was within the flow of the match, when just all of a sudden Dynamite would pick Tiger Mask up for a vertical suplex, and they would fly backwards over the top rope, and both, it looked like it killed them. And they actually sold it for a while, considering today, grading on today's curve. And all the stuff, they never lost the element of a struggle or a contest, but they were inventing all this shit because they were just such, Sayama was probably overall a better athlete than Dynamite. Dynamite, as a complete, believable wrestler, badass, and with a badass body, was probably obviously the tougher fucking guy. But Dynamite looked in those days, and see, that's the thing, the 80s WWF stuff, he had slowed down so much, not only speed physically, but in the things that he did in the ring and the bumps that he took, not only because his body was starting to break down, but also because what did he gain? 30, 40 pounds on straight off of steroids to...
Oh, at least, yeah.
At least. I mean, when you're looking at the 190, he looked on camera like he's 200 pounds because he had such a great physique. But was he 180, 190 in the early 80s with that series with Tiger Mask? But goddamn, the shape he was in, and he had the height with Tiger Mask, who was short, to where the point is you weren't questioning Dynamite's fucking toughness. He was a badass. And the bumps that he took and the shit that those knee drops to the head, there was a fucking cunt hair's worth of fucking play in between a lot of the shit he did and dangerous injury, but he was that sharp with it. There wasn't a lot of daylight in his shit, but he didn't cripple anybody. He crippled himself. So anybody that wants to look and see how the modern junior heavyweight style came about, the modern style of the 90s and the cruiserweights and the 2000s and everything before they've just completely gone off the rails with it, it was Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask. And they were Dynamite was the best from fucking England. He knew how to work all the European styles, and he knew the fucking Calgary style. And Tiger Mask, the original, Sayama, was the best young guy, the prodigy, in Japan, and he'd been to Mexico and knew how to work lucha and do all the shit. So that was incredible stuff. Besides, what do you think? Besides Tiger Mask and Dynamite, that was the gold standard. Then there was, Tiger Mask and guys like Black Tiger and everything. But did Dynamite Kid, who was Dynamite's best rival besides Tiger Mask? Or anybody in Calgary, any of the Hart brothers or et cetera?
I always like the stuff with Dynamite and Brett. I mean, there's stuff with them in Calgary, but there's a match from 85, maybe 86, Landover, Maryland, I think, where, like you said, he does the knee drop off the second rope onto Brett's head.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like he crushes his head. It's amazing.
And he'd get a double bounce. Because he'd land, Bobby Eaton called it his heavy knee. The knee that Bobby landed on with the knee drop off the top rope, with the left knee actually hit the fucking mat and he put weight on. So that was his heavy knee. The fucking Dynamite would fly off the top rope, and with Bobby's knee was going to the chest, his would go to the fucking guy's head, and he'd get a double bounce on it where it looked like he bounced on the mat and on the guy's head and never hurt him. Ken Wayne years ago in Tennessee in the late 70s, early 80s he and Danny Davis had been to Calgary the first time, and he came back and he told me, there's this fucking guy, Dynamite Kid, and this was before video at the time. So this guy, Dynamite Kid, they had a ladder match. He fucking climbed, he stood tippy-toe on the top of the ladder, and the other guy, I think he said Bret Hart, fucking drop kicked it, and Dynamite hit the top rope off the top of the ladder and bounced out into the fucking front row. He said, this guy's insane. He takes all kinds of bumps, and what a fucking athlete. So guys were starting to talk about him as soon as he got in Calgary.
Do you think Midnight Express versus British Bulldogs would have been good, or would it have been a style clash?
Boy, Davey would have gone along. Davey and Bobby were the go-along guys, right? Davey would have gone along, and he and Bobby Eaton would have had a ton of fun. I can see there being issues between Dennis Condrey and Dynamite Kid because, well, I mean, I don't know. I never managed anybody that worked with Dynamite, but Dennis would have definitely, the heels would have wanted to call the match and probably would have. But if Dynamite personally, who I, once again, never spent any time around whatsoever, I was purely a fan from afar. If he personally was as abrasive in some ways as I've been led to believe, he and Dennis might have bowed up at each other, which that could have got bad because neither one was in the mood to let another guy get one over on him. But the matches, I would have liked to have the matches with Calgary Dynamite and Davey Boy before Davey Boy put that last 40 pounds on from the steroids, and they were all able to do their shit. And at the same time, I guess I always thought that they were both, and Davey Boy carried the weight better than Dynamite, but Dynamite was so good when he was lean and fucking light. I just thought they were so much better before they put on the size they needed to go to the WWF.
Well, Jim, our next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Tyler. I recently saw that Jimmy Hart appeared on a program called Carmen Electra's Naked Women's Wrestling League.
Now, what now?
I'm reading you what it says here. I recently saw that Jimmy Hart appeared on a program called Carmen Electra's Naked Women's Wrestling League in a picture-in-picture capacity. Why?
Picture-in-picture capacity?
Why the fuck would he have anything to do with this if it wasn't even going to be in person to see the women? Do you know anything else about this short-lived promotion?
I have never heard of this. This promotion actually did live?
He said he watched it. He said I saw him on a program.
But was there more than one of them? I don't know. I can only assume that somebody asked Jimmy if he would cut a video for him, and maybe they probably offered to pay him. And I don't know whether he knew what it was going in or whether he cared or what. But I'm like you. If that had been the case, I'd have asked at least if I could go to the thing in person.
Remember, there was that other company that started up. I want to say the story was the guy won the lottery or something.
Wrestlicious.
Yeah.
Wrestlicious. This 19-year-old kid from South Carolina won millions of dollars in a lottery. And the first thing he thought that was a good idea for him to do was start a women's wrestling promotion.
And the promo video was like all the different women. And then it would just be Jimmy Hart. It's Wrestlicious. You know, in the middle of it.
Yeah, I understand that he was 19 years old and living with his parents and won millions of dollars in the lottery and started a women's wrestling promotion. And guess where he ended up when he was 21 years old?
He lost all his money?
Back living with his parents. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think they even did a TV special about it. He was one of the they did either a TV special or series, sort of probably like Sex Sent Me to the ER, that show, on one of these Discovery Learning channels or whatever, about people who had won millions of dollars in the lottery and just completely blown it, and it just ruined the lottery ruined my life is what it was, I think. And whether they just the stupid things they do or the way they blow their money or whatever. And yeah, he went from living with his fucking parents as a teenager to fucking having millions of dollars to living with his parents as a fucking 21-year-old or whatever.
Well, maybe Jimmy should have stuck with music.
You know, I'll tell you what, Jimbo. Well, no, Jimmy didn't need to stay. They were paying him to be on the fucking thing. He wasn't fucking footing the bill for it. Jimmy, I'm sure, has quite a tidy nest egg tucked away. And just think about the music rights. I keep on dancing, keep on doing the jerk right now.
Does he own the rights to keep on dancing?
I don't know, but it sounds good. He certainly gets a fucking check if they play his goddamn hit record rendition of it.
Did he write
somewhere around the world? He sang on it.
But he didn't write it, did he?
I don't know. He may have.
Because I used to hear for years Jimmy Hart was in the Gentrys, and then years ago when I finally saw a video of the Gentrys, he wasn't like the lead singer. He was just like the singer clapping and dancing while the other guy sang.
Well, he didn't necessarily say he was the lead singer. He just said he was he was the lead singer after Larry Raspberry left. Then it became Jimmy Hart and the Gentrys.
I need to listen to some of their music. I need to find out what's going on.
Well, who could forget Lance Russell's Nose? Eat your heart out, Rick Springfield. Eat your heart out, Rick Springfield. 'Cause she's my girl and she always will be the only one for me. And no rock and roll singer's gonna take her away from me.
Wow, this is impressive.
Yeah. See?
How about the We Hate School music video?
What about We Hate School?
The music video with Coco Ware on guitar.
Yes. Coco Ware could play a guitar as well as I can fly the space shuttle. We Hate School. I used to be able to sing that too. I heard it every night because I was the one playing it every night when the first family came to the ring.
Terry Funk sang it on his album in Japan.
Yes, and that's for people who spoke Japanese. He sang it in English, and it sounded just fine because they didn't know what the fuck he was talking about anyway. But see, Jimmy Hart had a wide, long, successful career in the music business. And you know, he's like a lot of these other big musical stars like Snoop Dogg and Cardi B and Brandy and Melissa Etheridge, who I've actually heard of. And a lot of the other ones. You know what he likes better than just oatmeal and sugar for breakfast? I'll tell you what he likes. He likes the Raycon Earbuds. That's exactly what he likes. See, we finally got there, Brian. The Raycon Earbuds Like their newest model, the Everyday E25 earbuds are their best ones yet. 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, and a more compact design that gives you a nice noise-isolating fit. Because what you're needing to do is, whether you're having to be out in public or you're having to be around other people that you don't want to be around and you can't socially distance yourself and you have to block them out, stick these things in your ears. You won't hear anything except what you want to hear. And for all you married folks out there, especially if you're quarantined, this may save you bills on divorce lawyers later on. Stick these wireless earbuds from Raycon in your ears, and you can only hear what you want to hear. And these start at half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market. And you know how I know that they're good? Because everybody out there knows that I don't know what a fucking Bluetooth is unless I need to go to the dentist for it. And I don't wear anything in my ears because I have screwy hearing anyway, and it's technology. But I trust the experts, my wife and the great Brian Last. And both of them say these things are the bee's knees. That's why I recommend them. And if you want to get the latest and greatest from Raycon and get 15% off of your order, yes, they're already cheaper than most quality premium wireless earbuds, and now you can get even more money off at buyraycon.com. That's B-U-Y, buyraycon, RAYCON.com/JCE. 15% off. Buyraycon.com/JCE for 15% off. And Brian, obviously, you can give personal testimonial to the fact that these things sound just like nature.
I have 2 pairs. Suzanne stole one of them. I had to get a backup. They're great.
That's right. Well, I thought you were going to say I have 2 pairs. I got one of them stuck in my ears.
No, I can't say that.
No, they come right out. That's the first thing I asked about. They come right out.
That's right. I've never heard a story of someone going to the hospital. I can't get this headphone out of my ear.
You know, my cousin years ago, when he started out in the medical business, he worked overnights at the emergency room at the hospital here. And he said that a guy came into the emergency room with a 16-ounce soft drink bottle stuck in his ass. It would not come out. And in questioning this gentleman about how it could be that he had a 16-ounce glass soft drink bottle stuck in his ass, it wouldn't come out, he said the only thing he could figure is that he was out in the woods and he had to take a shit. And he didn't want to get any poison ivy.
Come on.
So he climbed up on a low tree branch and squatted on that to take a shit and fell off backwards. And that's all he knew. But they got it out anyway.
Okay. Well, let's see.
Bye, Raycon.
Well, let's see if we can recover this show a little bit here.
I told you I was in one of those moods today.
You certainly are. This next one was sent into CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Joshua Jones. Who was at fault for the Stone Cold Owen Hart botched Piledriver? I had read Austin was expecting Owen to drop to his knees instead of his ass.
I was too. I don't have a fucking clue, to be quite honest with you, what happened there. Because I'd never seen Owen Hart hurt anybody. I had never seen Owen Hart do that specific maneuver before, but it has been done before in wrestling, and you know, it was a big show. And I thought, well, maybe it's something he's done in Calgary or whatever. I haven't watched his entire WWF career, even though had managed him for that period of time. I don't know whether there was miscommunication. I don't know whether he got off balance and tried to. He didn't look like he was off balance and tried to convert anything. He looked like that's what he wanted to do. And obviously, it was not it didn't end well. And I think that I've heard Austin do an interview where he said something like that Owen had suggested it and he'd kind of ixnayed it to begin with. And then he went into it anyway, that he thought that he was going to do something else. Maybe Owen fucking was intending to do that. They'd agreed that he'd do it another way. And then he fucking forgot. I never wanted to go ask Owen about it because it was touchy enough as it was, since the whole situation was not well received by anybody on the spot. So I wasn't going to come like, what the fuck? Owen was the last person to do anything reckless or anything, and he could perform almost anything safely. And I never saw him do anything that looked sketchy, like he just came up with anything on the, out of his ass on the spur of the moment. He didn't work that way. But at the same time, that didn't look like something that he should have been doing to Steve Austin, that it would end well. And it didn't. So I don't fucking know. But it wasn't like it was Austin's fault. Otherwise, he went up for it. And then it was kind of, the rest of it was Owen. So there was nothing that Steve Austin was at fault for. I can't tell you.
Was there a lot of heat on Owen after that?
Well, a lot of people weren't happy. No, fuck. There's and if it had been anybody else but Owen and the universal love that everybody had for Owen, there'd have been a lot of fucking heat on Owen from everybody. It would have been severe. He had built up so much goodwill that, it was like, Owen? It's like, one of those things where he was the last person I'd expect, officer. So, it was weird. I never saw him do it before, and obviously he never did that move again. And obviously Austin never fucking forgave him and has that right to not do so.
Well, our next question was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Don Markowitz. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Jim, like so many others, I felt the Steiner brothers never really fit into the WWF during their 1993 to 1994 run. In your opinion, do you think this was in part due to the lack of depth in the tag team division? Along with the Steiners, there was Money Inc., the Smoking Guns, the Head Shrinkers, the Heavenly Bodies for the SummerSlam match. Once Money Inc. broke up, they were basically replaced by the Quebecers as the top heel tag team. Had there been more quality tag teams, do you think the Steiners would have stayed longer and fit in better? Thank you for taking my question.
I don't know whether they would have stayed any longer or fit in any better, because they weren't concerned with the quality of their, I shouldn't say that. They were concerned with going out and having good matches, but the Steiners were not concerned with the quality of their matches over the way that they were being dealt with in a business fashion. I don't know what the issues were, but they weren't real happy. I don't think the WWF ever got them. It's like that. They didn't get Vader. Vince didn't get Vader. The Steiners came over from WCW for all those years, having those smash mouth matches with fucking Doom and the Nasty Boys and the Japanese guys they'd bring over, and Hanson and Gordy during that period of time. They come in and they weren't real happy with the guys that wanted to just sit around on the house shows, or, the Steiners were not dangerous, but they were stiff and you knew that they were there. And as a lot of guys have testified, when either Rick or Scott grabbed a hold of you, it was like being grabbed by a thing from another world and you went where you were supposed to go. But it wasn't the same smash mouth in-ring style up there. And also I believe that they thought, because of, they're the fucking Steiners, and look, they ought to be being used on top instead of just rotating in this mix. Because I remember we had the SummerSlam match, and they loved that, the Steiners did, because they liked working with the Midnight. They liked working with my tag teams. We knew how to do their shit, and then as a result, they would do our shit. And the match tore the house down. But that's when the Bodies were just part-times. They didn't want to do that because it stole all the thunder from the teams that were there full-time. Then when the Steiners came to work for me in Knoxville, October that year, it was first or second week of October. We had them in for 4 days. it was supposed to be WWF tag team title matches, rematches from SummerSlam. But they had taken the belts off of them and put them on, was it not, the Quebecers at that point, right? Jacques and Pierre. And I remember, because we had the matches booked and the Steiners were booked, and then Pat Patterson came to me at a TV, said, well, I wanted to tell you this. I said, oh, shit, you got to pull up. No, dog, they can make the dates, but we're taking the belts off them tonight. And we went, I said, okay. It was kind of a disappointment, but still, I've got the Steiners against the Heavenly Bodies in my Smoky Mountain Towns rematch off of SummerSlam. That's better than having fucking Quebecers as champions, right? So anyway, but then they took the belts off of them, and then they got pissed because they're like, what the fuck? They were not happy. And so when they came to Knoxville, I said, look, you know, I'd like to get my guys one win, but we don't mind putting you guys over either. I said, we got 4 shows. I said, you want to split them up? We'll do one, you do one. We'll DQ the others either way. What do you guys want to do? And they were willing to work, but they said, here's the thing. We don't like the way they're treating us up there, and we don't know what the fuck that we're doing. So we don't want to do any jobs, but we'll do whatever the fuck else. And okay, so we worked out the stuff with Arnold the dog, and I think they got DQ'd for letting the dog loose. People were screaming and everything. So that was fine, but they were not happy then. And then that was October. They didn't last much longer into 94, and they left. They didn't fit there. They didn't feel comfortable. They weren't being used to the level they thought they should be, and they just decided to do other shit.
Yeah, even more so than the Road Warriors, Vince had no idea what to do with the Steiner brothers.
Yeah, it didn't work. A lot of times there, the NWA talent would go to the WWF, and they'd be forced to either slow down or lighten up or kind of flake off or just be put in a mix of funniness. And I don't think they like that. I mean, Scott Steiner not liking funny, right, as people are saying, but he didn't ever act silly. He was funny within his own self, but Scotty didn't act silly, especially in those days. And Rick Steiner was the epitome of funny in the Varsity Club, but he wasn't once again winking at you when he was acting like the dog-faced gremlin. And they were both capable of fucking taking anybody down, stretching them, and sticking their toes in their ears, as Phil Hickerson would say. And once you've got your toes stuck in your ears, you're in a pretty horrible state.
Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Michael in Northern California. I have a hypothetical question. If Ric Flair had been unable to wrestle again after the plane crash, who does Jim think would have been the top guy for Jim Crockett Promotions in the 1980s?
Oh, good God.
Does he think anyone could have had the number of runs with the NWA belt that Rick had? Or does he think the spot would have gone to several different people with shorter runs?
Well, that would be highly more likely. I don't know how you could even answer that. It's a what if, right? If a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his ass on the ground, all that stuff. If Flair had not been able to come back, they didn't know at the time of the plane crash that they knew they had a budding young rookie star that had all the tools, the potential, and a lot of personality. But you forget that they didn't know what they didn't know, which was that Ric Flair was going to be the biggest fucking deal they had for the next 40 years. So they weren't specifically trying to create the biggest star of modern times. They were just trying to get a guy over in their territory. So they wouldn't have known what was lost, and they wouldn't have known what they were trying to replace. But just as far as being a top guy, if Flair never wrestled again, let's say Johnny Valentine wasn't in the plane crash. Let's say that Johnny Valentine then, went on to probably retire over the next couple of years and anoint somebody else as the top guy rather than there being a void, because Valentine had been that top guy at that period of time. Maybe it'd have been Wahoo McDaniel. Maybe Wahoo McDaniel would have turned heel and put that young Ricky Steamboat over. Who knows? But nobody would have been that dominant for that long period of time because that was not a spot that was trying to be filled by the promoters by putting Flair in it. They were trying to get a guy over in their territory. The more the guy gets over, the better they use him and the longer they use him and the more they use him in. They had every top name in the NWA at that disposal at their disposal at that time. So it could have been Blackjack Mulligan, or it could have been Wahoo McDaniel, or it could have been Tim Mr. Wrestling Woods, or it could have been Greg Valentine, or it could have been Jimmy Snuka, or it could have been Roddy Piper. Somebody was going to be the top babyface or the top heel, or somebody we don't even know. But almost nobody was going to get over to that level and last that long. That was what Flair did because he was unique, pretty much. I don't know. Did I say that right?
You know, we've asked the question in the past, who would have replaced Hulk Hogan? If Vince McMahon, when he went national, didn't have Hogan, who would he have used in that spot? Jim Crockett Promotions in the 80s. If Ric Flair goes to the WWF in 1984, who does Jim Crockett Jr. have in that spot as the top guy? I don't know if you want to go with Dusty. He's the booker.
Well, Dusty would have wanted to go with Dusty.
Dusty would have wanted to go to Dusty, but how big of a hit would it have been to Mid-Atlantic / Jim Crockett Promotions if they lost Flair in 84 or 85? And who, if anybody, could have replaced him in that spot of being the top guy?
It would have fucking hurt bad, and I don't know if anybody could have. And see, here's the thing. Flair, even though he was a babyface for those few years in the Carolinas, and that's when Dusty took the book and got things going national, the first thing he had to do was do that angle where Flair and the Horsemen fucked him up to clearly make them heels, even Ric Flair a heel in the Carolinas, because they were twin titans, twin towers as dueling babyfaces in the Carolinas, even when Flair was the heel nationally and Dusty was the babyface nationally. So if you'd have lost Flair, what Dusty probably would have done, because he was the equivalent on the babyface side as far as name value, box office draw, and we're not talking about 30 years later people remembering Dusty as fat and wearing polka dots. We're talking about at that time the three biggest names, and Andre was slowing down. So let's say the three biggest names for box office in 1986 in wrestling are Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Dusty Rhodes. Would you concur?
Certainly Hogan. We're talking about domestically, of course, not.
Well, yeah, and don't give me the asterisk with Inoki and Baba, or in Mexico with a hold. I'm talking about in the North American wrestling scene, the three biggest names at the box office in 1986 would have been Hogan, Flair, and Dusty. I would and then and maybe Savage. Because
not really yet,
or whoever in the WWF, whoever Hogan's top, Orndorff that year, they were drawing huge money.
Yeah,
but Flair and Dusty had been around. It wasn't like a hot program. Flair and Dusty had both been hot for years at that point, and Andre was slowing down. So those are the guys. So if Flair goes to the WWF, I would be pretty sure that Dusty would, in the short term, build around himself as the NWA champion, vanquishing fucking heels, because he was still building Magnum. And then he would have probably tried to find, and maybe it would have been Nikita Koloff, the guy to take it off of him to put it on Magnum by the following year. But that's, you don't just, if you lose a guy the level of Flair, you don't just say, well, I'm going to go out and get another heel champion. No, you redo the way you orient your territory, because you've still got a huge draw babyface in Dusty Rhodes, and you've got one that you're getting ready. So just fucking switch it. Instead of feeding Flair babyfaces all year to get ready for Magnum, you put it on Dusty to keep it warm and keep it important. He is a huge star. You fucking feed him some heels until you get to the right one that you want to fucking drop it to, with the thought of Magnum getting it on the other side after a sufficient period of chase. I would think.
Okay. Well, let's get another question.
Apparently you weren't real fucking happy with that answer.
I don't know what the answer would be. I mean, I'm trying to think of something interesting with the Hogan question. There are options. There's Kerry Von Erich. There's Austin Idol. There's different people you think either charisma-wise or just general appeal-wise would work in that spot. Replacing Flair is a lot more difficult.
Exactly. And that's also why that, he had to come with the purchase in 88 when TBS bought the whole thing, because besides that was the one wrestler that Ted Turner actually knew who the fuck he was at that point. He was the franchise for that company, and he never took full advantage of it like he should have. He should have just gone and said, it's either me or Jim Herd completely. He shouldn't have dicked around and I'll just quit as booker and then he should have just said, before it got out of hand and it was still, the company and the business was still somewhat salvageable, he should have gone to somebody else higher up in TBS and said, me or Herd. That's the one thing he should have done, because I guarantee you, if they'd at that time, they probably would have got rid of Herd. But then a few years later, nobody was important because nobody was making any money in the company.
All right, our next question, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. This is from the son of Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
Oh, for God. What is it? Is he played by Lon Chaney? Or Vick Tayback? Vick Tayback got several big pops on last week's program.
Yeah, he really did. Really did. Here's the question from Charlie's son. Why did the WWE wait to get AJ Styles when he was so old? If they would have gotten him when he was young, The Undertaker would have been young too, and they could wrestle all the time.
Oh, good God.
And why isn't AJ the champ all the time? He's the best. Once again, from the son of Charlie in Starkville, I'm assuming a small child here, based on his questions.
Well, I don't think AJ's ancient now. How old is AJ Styles now?
It's probably 42, maybe? I don't know.
Okay, so they've had him, 3 or 4 years? He did start there late for debuting for the first time, but I think he was pretty much at his peak in the ring because of the experience that he had. And I'm sorry, but the AJ Styles before his New Japan run and then this run that he's had in the WWE, the AJ Styles of that time would have never got the chance to get in the ring with The Undertaker because he wasn't a big enough star, because nobody knew who he was, because he was in TNA. So that would have been hampered there. And also, to be quite honest with you, I don't think if 30-year-old AJ Styles had been around, I don't know what, 2004 era Undertaker, no, Undertaker wouldn't have wanted to get in the ring with him because he didn't know what the fuck he was doing back then. So it's an odd question. And also the size difference, I think it works better that Undertaker has, the whole story of the Undertaker possibly fading off into the sunset and the obnoxious young kid, much smaller, but, et cetera, coming out to give him one last run was a lot more appealing than just both of them in their prime. Nobody would have given AJ 15 fucking seconds with Taker. And I like AJ. I'm just being honest. AJ's never been over in a position like a physically dominant position where people would have bought him as a credible physical threat to The Undertaker. Am I missing something here?
Well, to the overall question about when AJ arrived in WWE, you were around him in TNA. Do you think he was ready? Do you think he would have fit in with the WWE at that point in his career?
No, they would have given him a nervous breakdown. And no, he needed the time that he spent, like I said, a few years in Japan and then a few years on the roster in the WWE, working with a wider variety of top talent instead of indie guys. And I'm not saying all the TNA guys were indie, but you worked with the TNA guys. And if you worked anywhere else, it was with indie guys. So in the TNA tapings and pay-per-views, that's 3 days a month, whatever it was back then. So, he needed more experience. And obviously I think he's at his best as far as in-ring performances have gone the last few years. He did a bunch more spots, but it was in a much smaller promotion that hardly anybody in the overall scheme of things saw in relation to the WWE. And a lot of it was, fun to watch, but didn't sometimes make a lot of sense. And God, can you imagine when he was in the six-sided ring, taking him out of that and putting him in the ring with The Undertaker straight off? Because a lot of guys, it looked to me like had to fucking relearn how to work once they got out of that fucking six-sided ring that I fucking despised. Just so fucking hard. The ropes don't have any fucking give because they're too short. The ring beams didn't have give because of the way it had to be constructed with those sides, so they were all shorter and less givable in the middle. So it was a hard bumping ring. It was awkward to sneak up on anybody from behind, and the spots just looked off kilter. I understand why they did it. It made them different, but once that bad creative rendered it a moot point that they were ever going to overtake the WWE, the thing to have done would have been normalize the ring even quicker than they did. But that's just me.
Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Ed Sparks.
Ed Sparks?
Ed Sparks?
Does he? How do you know he does? Is it only when he gets going fast enough that he sparks? Or
I haven't found a time when Dennis Condrey wasn't a heel, and he was tremendous at it. Maybe I am wrong about him being a babyface at once. Bobby and Stan obviously had success as babyfaces throughout their careers. My real question is whether or not the Midnight face turn in 1988 would have worked as well with Dennis in place of Stan. Interesting question there. Would you guys have been able to turn face if you had Dennis instead of Stan?
Well, but that's a trick question, because the only reason we were able to turn babyface was because Dennis was on the other side and he had been one of us. So it's a trick question to begin with, but having said that, maybe the meaning of the question is, was Dennis as good of a babyface? The answer is yes, and he had been a babyface. Early in his career, when he first broke in, he was babyface. He was an underneath babyface in some of the existing Tennessee films. He did a 2-minute job to the Mongolian Stomper in Memphis, Stomper's first night in. He had been a top babyface down in the Alabama territory, the little small Alabama territory that Bill Golden ran. I'm pretty sure he was a babyface down there on a little run he had in '74. And Jimmy Golden was a top guy down there in his rookie year. Obviously, he was the promoter's son. And he and Hickerson were a babyface team just by circumstance in '75 a time or two when they had heel versus heel matches with like Ron and Don Bass. But after that, truthfully and honestly, no, Dennis was never a babyface again. But the thing is, he was such a fantastic worker. He could have done it. He could have performed the matches. He was a master at calling matches for babyfaces. You know, he was responsible for all of our early matches with the Rock and Roll and the Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA and all those fucking. So he could do it, but he didn't look like a babyface. So it would be battling against the tide of normal people's reactions to somebody to try to, if they are predisposed visually to dislike a guy, why do you battle against the tide or just make him a fucking heel? So yes, he could have performed everything, but he wasn't as nice looking as Stan. And he wasn't, the girls liked Stan and the old women could like Stan and even, whatever the case. And you get more sympathy on Stan because he's a good-looking guy instead of a mean-looking bastard like Dennis. So anyway, yes, he could have performed everything, but it wouldn't have had the same grip on people. But also, that was the whole thing, is that the reason, if we'd have just turned babyface against a team managed by Paulie dangerously, that wouldn't have worked, at least like it did. Or if we'd turned babyface against a team even called the original Midnight Express. If he had Randy Rose and Norvell Austin, it wouldn't have worked because nobody knew that, right? It had to be Dennis. Dennis had to be part of that team for us to switch on because they knew of the history between us all. So that's why that and how that worked.
Okay, let's get a couple more questions before we wrap things up. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com.
Well, you've been a ball of fire today. I thought you'd want to go on much longer.
Well, we've done about 9 hours of recording in the last week. It seems like, at least.
And you've had a big desk to put together. Go ahead.
That's right. This question was sent to the CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Ernest. My question...
What's that? My question is, why didn't you like my shit when I was still alive?
My questions are... Have you ever known Dave Meltzer to personally frustrate Vince McMahon? Do you have any specific story of Vince changing plans because of Meltzer finding something out? I only mention Vince because that's who I grew up on, but if you trail off into Dave pissing off other promoters or bookers, please do.
No, I've never, the only booker I know of promoter I know of for sure, Dave Meltzer is pissed off is me lately. I'm sure, a lot of the guys, when they first started hearing about the Observer, they didn't like it because it was smartening people up and, the dirt sheet and everything is the scandal sheet, as Jimmy Garvin called it. It was the scandal sheet. Jimmy Garvin's first one to ever show me one. I never heard Vince say, "Oh, Meltzer found out this, so we've got to change it." I never heard Vince say they had to change anything. I'd never heard of anybody specifically changing something because of what Dave found out. Now, the guy in the newspaper down in Houston, when he printed at that time, they were going to, who was it? Jake was going to drop the title to Slater or something of that nature. And
what it was Jake was leaving to go to the WWF.
Right.
So he's basically saying that show at the Sam Houston Coliseum, there won't be a title change because Jake's leaving. And then they did the title change to say, fuck you.
Yeah. So they put the belt on Jake and then took it off him the next week or whatever. But just like, fuck you. You can't ever be sure. Now that's obviously documented. I never remember anybody changing anything because Meltzer found it out or whatever. Sometimes they were like, how the fuck does he hear these things? And I didn't even know, when I was in the WWF, a lot of times I would have to call Meltzer to find out, what was going on for real in the company, who wasn't just, saying shit. But nobody, changing anything. And over the years, his heat died down with the boys. And unfortunately, that's, I think, what led to his downfall. When he had an adversarial relationship with almost everybody in the business, he was only reporting facts and opinions, but the opinions were generally along the lines of what a reasonable person would have, not being personally involved in the situation. Now that everybody's put him up on a pedestal, called him the Grand Poobah and genuflex in his direction, he's been blinded by he's finally one of the boys, instead of still giving his genuine, unvarnished, unbiased opinions and reflections, because he can't any longer be unbiased or unvarnished.
Did you ever see any copies of the Observer in Vince's office?
No, the Finkel report would, Vince McMahon would not ever read 16 pages of the Wrestling Observer with that size type if he had a gun held to his fucking head, because 80% or more of that document might not have anything to do with the WWF. If something was said in the Wrestling Observer that was about the WWF that was needed to be imparted to Vince McMahon, it was in the Finkel report. And if Dave Meltzer said something about WCW that needed to be imparted to Vince McMahon, it was in the Finkel report. But no, the last thing I saw was actual first-generation copies of the Observer on Vince's desk.
Our final question this week, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. From Jason in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was recently watching Ricky Steamboat's January 1989 return to WCW as Eddie Gilbert's mystery partner against Flair and Wyndham. Watching this, I recalled that I was simply not buying Eddie Gilbert as a babyface. His interview, his character, his in-ring. Back then and today, I always identified him as a lead heel in Mid-South UWF, and thought he was much, much better in that role. What was the mindset of booking Eddie as a face versus his better-known heel persona when in WCW at the end of the 1980s?
Oh, God almighty, I can't remember with, excruciating detail exactly what Eddie had been doing at that point in time in the program or on the program and how he'd been being presented. Obviously, he came over after the UWF purchase, right? Actually, after the UWF purchase, didn't he go back to Memphis and then he came in?
No, then he went to Continental.
Continental, that's right. It was Continental. And then he came in because Continental, that's why. Paul E. had been with Eddie in Continental, but Paul E. was working for Vern on Vern's TV tapings, which was all that the AWA was doing, because Continental was pretty much, that's also when we got Mick Cactus, because I heard Continental was closing down and I was able to get him to come over and me and Kevin were able to do that thing with Mick. But the point is, Continental was closing down. Guys were available. That's when George Scott had just come in. I think Crockett was probably responsible for bringing Eddie in, though, because he was already there. As of November, December, he just come in. Point is, George Scott, the one good thing that he did was bring Steamboat back. And it just so happened that Eddie was in a position where he was a young baby face, where it worked for him to bring Steamboat in as the partner. All the attention was going to be on Steamboat and Flair anyway, right? But at the same time, Eddie had gotten somewhat of a reputation for a booking mind at that point. I think that Crockett may have been checking him out, or they may have been talking to him like he, might get some spot, which he did later on that summer when they got rid of George Scott and went to a committee. It was Jim Ross, Kevin Sullivan, Eddie Gilbert, Jim Barnett, obviously, and Jim Hurd. They had to go with everything, but they were the committee. And then, of course, he got sideways with Flair. So that's just why Eddie was in that spot, and it didn't hurt, or it wasn't a great big thing either way, whether he was the partner or not. Because I remember we were excited at that time because we had not yet had an actual conversation with George Scott. He was just coming in. We hadn't met Hurd yet. And we hear Steamboat coming back, and they're going to redo this angle on Atlanta TV and recreate Flair and Steamboat. We were actually excited. And it was a great match, and the people in the studio went berserk. I stood around the corner, the curtain, and watched it as it happened. And it was great. And Eddie was a great worker. He was more than able to hold his part of things like that. So it was an odd pairing, but it didn't hamper anything. But that's where, that was that early excitement. And then soon after, we spoke to George Scott and determined that we were going to fucking leave. And soon after we had already determined that we were going to leave, that they fired George Scott, then we actually got a chance to sit down and talk to Jim Hurd, and then we didn't want to come back. But for a week there with that fucking match they did, it was exciting.
Okay, well, with that, the drive-thru is closed.
I have never heard you so tired and so lackluster and so defenseless, and you're limp-wristed and you're spaghetti-legged and you're rubber-armed, and your body language, baby, your body language said, I can't get across the airport. Somebody said to Brian Last, go to the doctor, honey. Go to the doctor, baby. Get you some help. You need to get you some relief. I said I would not give them the damn satisfaction.
Of course, you can hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts. I think it's debuting on Friday. Back to normal this week. Wherever you find your favorite podcast. Check out the Experience and the Drive-Thru whenever you want. On YouTube, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It is the first thing that pops up. Over 140,000 subscribers now. Join the party. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Full episodes, clips, and omnibus collections. If you want classic episodes of the Drive-Thru and the Experience, patreon.com/Cornette. For only $5 a month, you get in the door, and you get another batch of episodes uploaded each and every...
But it costs you $50 to get back out the door.
But you get another batch of episodes each and every Sunday night. This past week, we put up 2 episodes, including Adam Pearce and Teddy Long on the show, as well as several drive-thru episodes. Check it out today, patreon.com/Cornette. You can follow Jim on Twitter at @TheJimCornette. You can follow me on Twitter at GreatBrianLast. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast, 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast. Should have an episode out once we get back to a normal schedule. Been nuts lately, ladies and gentlemen.
Just crazy.
Cornette's Collectibles. What do I say here? I mean, the store's not open.
Don't say anything yet. The store, but everybody's getting their stuff very soon. It's flying as we speak off the United States Post Office trucks being delivered to the customers.
If that answer isn't acceptable to you, then you must sue. 888-692-8084, the law office of Stephen P. New. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com.
Or if you don't want to go that far, just look for the guy dressed up in a ninja outfit at the post office and blow your fucking slobbery germs all over him.
Well, until Friday on the experience, and it's always an experience. And next week, right here on the Drive Thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally ho!